All right. All right. I got to work on the soundboard a little bit, but hey, we're back. It is Monday. Man, Monday always feels like Monday. Because it's Monday. Oh, man. Welcome back. Welcome to our stream. This is the HEF podcast, the podcast for the Home Education Foundation, where we lobby for parents' freedoms to teach and educate their children as they see fit. We are the parents' voice at the Capitol. Here are our sponsors that make everything that we do possible. We have Arete, FPEA, and Fisher Precious Metals. Thank you to our top sponsors. And thank you to Arete as our title sponsor coming in this year. We really appreciate having you with us. But especially thank you to, all of the families who donate regularly to us. When we see those $5 and $10 donations coming in, when you sign up monthly on our website at flhef.org/support, it really means a lot. It really, really means a lot to know that all of these different families are aware of what we're doing and watching, benefiting, and helping us support all the other families that benefit from it as well, and to kind of continue to reach out to them, and find them, and advocate for them. So we thank you for being with us as well. Well, good morning, Crystal.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Did you turn on my sound?
I did turn on your microphone. I did a good thing this time. Yay. Well, here we are. I'm getting notifications of things that are popping up. There we go. There's been a lot. I feel like maybe we'll have a slow week. Maybe we'll have a low week. Or, you know what? Things don't look as chaotic. No, man. The moment the week starts, it's like, okay, everything that everyone else had on their agenda finds its way to my plate, and we'll just take care of things.
We did get a slow weekend finally because we just wrapped up convention season. So this was the first weekend in a while that we haven't needed to travel somewhere in Florida. So
that's true. And I did finally get a chance to play D&D. They've been begging since January for us to play D&D again. And we did finally get some time yesterday to relax and play some Dungeons and Dragons. And it was interesting. Maybe we'll talk more about that later, because I think it fits something we might get into. Just depends. But it has been a little bit slow this weekend because we haven't had to travel. So that is kind of nice to be able to sit in a beanbag and read a book, or spend some time with the kids and watch TV. It's nice once in a bit to be able to do that. So. But there's so much going on, so many calls. I think people normally who follow the stream perhaps, or know what we do, maybe normally think of Brenda in the Capitol during legislative session. And that's true. That happens. Now I'm with her. But there's more that happens throughout the year behind the scenes. And there's constant calls. There's community partners and leaders. There are a lot of people who want to know how they can help, and so we're trying to build out the ambassador program. It's not ready yet, but I will say this in terms of that: if you have a certain set of skills, like that Liam Neeson video, if you have acquired a certain set of skills and you are ready to leverage them, all you need to do is email me directly at jason@flhef.org and let me know what those skills are. And how I can devise a plan on how to put them to use. We had a young guy who was pretty good at video, and I thought, okay, great. Well, we need some videos cut from our live stream as smaller reel type pieces, somebody to kind of watch it and cut segments out. So he started that, but didn't kind of finish. And I thought the ones that he did were pretty good, and I thought, okay, cool. It'll be nice to have some help here. And then it kind of fizzled. So if you do have a certain set of skills and you are interested in helping out, just let me know. Jason@flhef.org. Send me a message and let me know that, and what those skills are that you think you have. And we'll work together on figuring out a way to kind of bless everybody with them. What else? We were talking about, calls and trends. So we had some calls Obviously, we get a lot of calls about Step Up for Students, especially with the scholarships kind of around the corner right now.
Yeah. A lot of PEP questions this time of year because people are waiting to get awarded, waiting to get funded. We get a lot of those questions, even though we're not Step Up customer support. But yeah, so that's been a lot of the questions we're getting lately are PEP related, but that's not really what we want to focus on today.
Yeah.
So,
So some of the stuff that we deal with during legislative session, we try to build those relationships with representatives and the senators outside of that so we can kind of get ahead of certain things that we see trending or ideas that people talk about that they haven't necessarily put on paper. We try to then connect with them and workshop and get the right language on those papers and things like that. So I would say that we are making a list of key issues that we are watching for. It's a little challenging to put the list forward facing because some of them are rather nuanced. I don't know if you've noticed, but some of these things require definitions. I think one of the key issues that we run into, not just with the legislators, but 100% definitely with the legislators, is that they don't actually understand home education. Even one of our community partners we were talking with this week, we were talking about home education. We were trying to explain the nuance between parent-directed, which is what home education is historically, the freedom for parents to educate as they see fit, and school-directed or teacher-directed or system-directed. So there's this very, very nuanced thing because it's like, oh, well, can so-and-so help me? Or what's a co-op? What's the difference between a co-op and a home education instructional program? And then like, hey, we want to get together and do this as a group. And then there's an ever-growing trend right now with the expansion of school choice that people are flooding into out of the public school system or even perhaps private schools and into these freedom-bound choices.
Yeah, a lot of people moving into PEP and home education.
But they don't necessarily historically have a knowledge of what it is when they get into it. They bring the knowledge of their system with them into this new kind of frontier.
And just as a side point on that, there are also a lot of new people coming in that just are getting inaccurate information from, when they leave their school, the stuff that they're told, or, whoever is surrounding them is feeding them. I encountered a guy at the last conference we were at. He had been homeschooling for 2 years and had never submitted a letter of intent because no one ever told him he needed to.
Sure.
He withdrew his kids from the public school, and they said, okay, cool, you're withdrawn, and never told him anything else. And he hadn't done the research to know what statute required of him. So that's an issue as well. That's not where we were going, but I just want to throw that out there, that it's important to be informed to know what's required in statute and what the laws actually say.
It's very important, and I think that it appears to be most important when you're in the throes of a dilemma, right? So when you're like in the throes of something already thrust upon you as a problem, like, oh, by the way, for the last 2 years, you were supposed to have your children enrolled in a home education program by sending in your letter of intent. It's like, what? Why did no one tell me? Right?
Yeah.
Those are the moments where like we start reading, that. And we start trying to like dive into the details, but not that it's too little too late, but it can definitely catch us off guard. And that's one of the beautiful things about the stream, like help share this information, help share the stream. People can come on here and ask questions. If they're new to home education, we can give them this place where they can connect with others in the community. They can ask questions. They can ask what's required of them of statute. We can dive into those details and provide that for them. Deline Howell says, can you give us dates for this next legislative season? I know you've said it before, specific people or groups or whatever we should, quote, follow concerning the upcoming season. Okay. I would definitely find your representatives on Twitter and now called X and follow them and see what they're tweeting, see what they're saying, because if they're engaging in conversation beyond just whatever their party's talking points are, you can get an idea of where they're headed with some of these things.
Do you want
And
to
I will.
share real quick how to find who your representatives are?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. On our website, which you should be able to see right now, you can go to information on the information part of our site. And under information, if you go down the menu, you'll see Find My Rep and Find My Senator. And either one of those links will take you to a place where you can put in where you live, and it will tell you who your representative or senators are.
They'll
So you
take
can.
you to the official Florida government site where
Mhm.
you can search that. Yeah. We're just trying to make it easy for everybody to find. So that's why
Oh,
it's linked directly from our site. But it's important that you know your specific rep because, as we've mentioned before, if you're trying to contact someone who's not for your district, they will often just delete those emails because
yes. Yeah.
they don't have time to respond to people who are not their constituents.
Yeah,
There
they
are
get a million
exceptions
at
to
a time.
that, but in general, you want to make sure that you're targeting the representatives that are actually your representatives for your
Right.
district.
Oh, they were elected to represent you,
Yeah.
so you hold them accountable. I think that's one of the key ways to realize that we do, at least in some way, have control over things like the scholarship programs and stuff like that. If there are things that you're following your representatives on and how they vote, and obviously during sessions and season, we'll kind of go through some of these things with you. And I think that during this season, I every time we had a committee and someone from the committee spoke, I had like a YouTube video that went up. It said, "Here's what they said. Here's what they said. Here's our response. Here's who testified." And I like put those YouTube videos together, so you can find those on our YouTube page as well. But it's important to kind of follow them, even if you're not sitting there glued to the Florida channel like for 15 hours every day during session, which I don't think anyone can be. It's one of those things where knowing how they vote on their issues is really important because you holding them accountable is key. And not everybody votes their conscience. I think we had one guy, and I'll shout him out again and again and again. But Mike Beltran from that Hillsborough County area, he voted his conscience. I don't think it did much other than give a feather in his cap and give him an "I told you so" moment when the time came. But I think that small dissenting voice over time can matter, but it can really, really only matter if we help in the elections with them. Like if we're walking with them in the elections, if we're helping them with their campaigns, and helping them, whenever they're in alignment with what we're doing, helping them out. So,
Yeah.
if
To answer her other question about
yeah.
when the next legislative season starts, I was just Googling to see if I could find the exact dates.
Mm-hmm.
But it basically starts the first Monday after the first Tuesday in March on odd numbered years, and then the first Monday in January on even numbered years. And I think there might be exceptions to that, but so we're looking at starting like the first Tuesday in March ish.
Yeah, it's March,
Whatever that date
and then
is.
on an election year, January.
I haven't looked at the actual calendar dates, but
Yeah, it's like
but
March to May.
yeah, but one of the points we were wanting to make is that even though the official sessions don't begin until that particular time of year, the discussions and the other meetings leading up to those are happening now. So everybody is trying to basically get their ducks in a row, get their plans in place for what bills they're going to want to push through during that legislative season, what issues are important to them. So now is the time, really, if you're wanting to reach out to your representatives and get something on their radar, do it now. Because if they see enough concerns expressed on a particular issue, now is the time for them to start putting that on their radar, building toward the next legislative season.
Right. Joanne has a question. She says, "How soon would you know if anything is being proposed for changes to PEP? Would it be before the session?" So
Well,
sometime. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, last year, the contents of 1403 took us a little bit by surprise. We knew there was a bill coming. That would be what Brenda called the glitch bill. That would be fixing some of the issues. But
Yeah.
what was actually in the glitch bill took us by surprise. This year, though, we kind of have a little bit of an idea of what we might be facing coming up. Not that there may not be other things that some legislators throw out there that take us by surprise again, but
Mhm.
we know that it's likely that we're going to be facing a push for restrictions again,
Sure.
just based on what we're hearing.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I don't know exactly what those are. We are trying to find out what they have in mind. Right now, all we can gain from them is that there are some who are interested, and then there are some who are not. There are some who are looking and saying if there's anything that doesn't trust parents, we don't want to see it. So that's good news. That's good news. But then there are others who are like, yeah, but not this and not this and not this. So we don't know the exact nature of what those are going to be, but we do know that they're interested. So if I were you, I would reach out to your representatives and let them know. This is actually this great segue into the Tell Your Story project. So the Tell Your Story project is in existence for this very purpose. A lot of times they don't know. They don't know what home education is. They don't even know that it's called home education. It's literally not called homeschooling legally in statute. It's called home education in Florida. In other states, it's called homeschooling. In Florida, it's called home education for a very, very real reason. Brenda fought to make sure that conceptually and ideologically it was as different from public school as possible, that it was meant to mark that it's not that at all. It's actually something totally else, and it's parents educating their children. It's not about bringing a public school mindset home to school at home. It's not the same system. It's not the same, pretty much anything. And they don't understand this. So they don't understand why you might want a kayak. That blew their mind in the scholarship. So you don't use the scholarship for it as a home education family. If you had the funds, you'd probably still buy a kayak and take your kids out on the river and show them things. I know that whenever we're talking about bird flight, so this is interesting. The D&D session that we had yesterday, my son is playing a bird character who's a warrior bird, and we're in a cave, and he tries to take flight. And he jumps up in the air and flies straight up. And I just kind of scratched my head like, I don't think that's how it would work. And I was trying to explain to him the mechanics of bird flight and things like that. And outside of our windows, there were a bunch of birds flying around. And I was like, hey, take a look and look how they take off. And now you can understand how to realistically play this out, because you can kind of see the physics playing out where they kind of have to kind of glide and take off rather than going just straight up like a helicarrier. Or as they said, Superman can fly straight up. Superman doesn't have wings, so yeah, and it's a fantasy game, so they can pretend. But it was a good moment to let them kind of see the real world, watch the birds, and play a game and understand science behind it. And that's school. That's education happening. They're learning stuff about the world and the way that it works. But this is not at all what public school looks like. That's not how information is delivered.
It's
And
interesting because as you were explaining that, and I was wondering, what the application you were going to make from that. I also was realizing that it's a good analogy for what we're trying to do with the Tell Your Story project. So the
mhm,
legislators don't understand how home education works, so we want to be those birds outside the window flying around that they can watch.
sure.
Um, we want them to be able to see what it actually looks like in motion, what it looks like in the trenches when you're doing it day to day, and that's going to look different for
Yeah.
different families. And so
Yeah.
that's really what we're trying to portray.
And right now, the difference shocks them. It makes them, well, what if they spend money on this? And what if they spend money on that? Okay. Okay. Obviously, personally, I think like some of the ideas are outlandish, but educational benefit should be the primary goal, and it should drive everything, not what you think they should or shouldn't spend. The educational benefit should drive everything. Anyway, the point is, it's not public school at home, and this project is key because it really will give parents across Florida a way, I think parents across the country even, a way to kind of point to something and say this is this is how we do it, or this is the freedoms we have, or this is what it can look like. And when you see 5 to 10 different ways and none of them look at all like public school, like it kind of sends a message like, okay, well, maybe we're trying to regulate this thing that we don't fully understand. But also there are a bunch of people right now on another side. So that's the legislative side. But on the other side, there's a lot of people who are moving into home education as school choice is expanding. And I've seen the ads. Like, I've seen the ads on YouTube. And they're like, oh, homeschooling is hard. Well, you can homeschool your children with our help. And it's almost like, in 5 easy steps, you can set them up in this program and we'll do it for you. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, hang on a second. Like, that's not at all home education.
That's
like,
not parent-directed either.
no, that's a system. That's a system directing you. Like, parent-directed education is if you select a tutor for this, or you go pick one class, or you go pick that class, or that's fine. Mix and match. You're the director. Direct the education. But there are these systems kind of coming in and just like, oh, drop your kids off and leave them here. We'll do everything start to finish, and we'll give them the grades and tell you how they did, and etc.
Well, that's an important ideological distinction between
Sure.
parent-directed and school or system-directed. You don't have to be in the public school for it to be a system-directed approach.
Correct.
And so one of the issues we're running into is there are a lot of people, especially now because of PEP and the money that's there. There are a lot of businesses that are wanting to push into the homeschool space, and they're calling it whatever they need to call it in order to market to homeschool parents.
Yeah.
But really what they're pushing is a plug your kid into our system and let us tell you how to school them, which
Right.
is not the heart of parent-directed education. So again,
Right.
we don't
Right.
want to limit parents' options. We want them to have options. But
Sure.
there are some definitions and some
Yes.
distinctions that need to be made in statute between something
Yes.
that is parent-directed and then a school choice option that is system-directed.
Yeah. So ideologically, I think that and traditionally, homeschooling or home education has always been that freedom-loving, unbound. I think some people call it unbundled. We're trying to unbundle services. I don't fully understand the use of that term.
I think that term is more common in other states because that's
Okay.
where I've heard it. But yeah,
But like, what are you unbundling? Like, what was bundled? Are you talking about a system and a program? Are
I
you
think so.
unbundling it, but then making a program so it's bundled? It's unbundled, bundled.
When
I
I
don't know.
directed the home education instructional program, we called ours a la carte, and I think
yeah.
that's the same
Okay.
concept. It's
Okay.
unbundled. Like you
That
don't have
I
to
can
purchase a
resonate with that.
package.
Right.
You can
Okay.
choose and pick what you want for your child.
Okay. You made that you made that language land, so I can get that. All right. Thank you. Because I'm like, my brain glitches on that.
Because again,
I
a
never
home
thought of it as
education-
bundled to begin with. It
A
was
home education instructional program, if it's operating as it should according to the definition, is a parent-directed option. They're not
Right.
forcing you to take particular classes. They're not dictating a whole comprehensive educational program for your
Right.
child.
There's no
They are
structure
providing
system.
classes that you choose from and whatever fits your child's needs best. And some parents do that as their full-time approach. Some parents only take one class, and that's fine. That's the parent's choice, but that's the key. It's the parent's choice. It's
And
not
at the end of the day,
your
the
kid
parent.
takes all of these classes or they can't be part of our program. That's not
Right.
how HEIPs work.
Right. At the end of the day, the parents override all of the teachers in terms of grades. So
Right.
they can
And
look at what the
that
teacher's
is the
done.
other- That is the other piece is HEIPs don't assign grades. They don't provide records for you. They don't do transcripts for you. Because again, if you are home education by statute or PEP by statute, you provide those things for your child, not a school or entity.
Yeah. And then, so that's on a legislative end of it, and kind of the nuance of the language. I think all of this whole dynamic conversation came because I was saying that it's difficult to put our talking points up
Yes,
because
it
they're
is.
so nuanced.
It
This
really
is how nuanced they are.
It's just people don't use the same terms.
No,
in
we
the
don't
same
use the
way.
same words.
Hybrid,
Yeah.
micro school, umbrella, all these terms are
Yep.
undefined in statute. And
Yep.
so what one person is meaning when they say it is not the same as what someone else is meaning when
Yep.
they say it.
I mean, look at all the terms. You've got school choice, you've got unbundling, you've got micro schools, learning pods, one-room schoolhouses, co-ops, home education, instructional programs, umbrellas. None of these things
Yeah.
are recognized
So
terms. Like
one
there's
of the
any
things,
singular. Even the word homeschooling,
right?
people don't think of the same thing when the word is used. It's important.
And
Where you,
one of the things we're working on is pushing for some definitions.
yeah,
Not because we want to limit parents' options, but because we can't protect an option if it's not defined and actually written in statute as a valid
yeah.
option. And we don't
So
want parents to be operating in those gray areas like that poor guy who didn't even know that he
oh
was
my
supposed to
word,
submit a letter of intent,
poor
right?
dude. Yeah.
So we are trying to define these because right now we've talked about the attendance tracks before, the lanes that you
Mm-hmm.
can be in. There are 6 of them in statute. And if what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing with your child doesn't clearly fit into one of those lanes, you are not protected
Right.
by statute. And so
Right.
defining what fits in each of those lanes, or maybe we need to redefine the lanes or create new lanes. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of the discussion that is happening right
It is, and I think definitions are important. On one end, some people are like, well, defining things restricts them because it tells what they are, but it also includes what they're not. And I agree. It includes what they're not, and that is in some ways restrictive. But I think I can't think of a better way to put it. The Disney song and the Beauty and the Beast at the very end when they're going to kill him, and they're like, "We don't like what we don't understand. In fact, it scares us. And this monster is mysterious at least. So bring your
now.
guns, bring your knives. Yeah,
Bring your children and your wives.
yes, kill the beast." So when we look at things that are unknown, we often, there's an aversion or a distance that we keep because we're unsure and unknown. So it's safer to keep your distance. And sometimes we just straight up reject or squash them because we don't fully
Yeah.
understand it yet.
Or there's just massive amounts of confusion because nobody
Hmm.
knows what is actually required of them legally in a particular track.
And defining things, giving things definitions helps them to go, oh, this is what you are. Okay, so you are over here. Great, cool, do that. We're going to leave you be. And then, oh, you're over here. Awesome, great, do your thing. And, it's important. It's important that you can't protect something that isn't defined. So it's very difficult to protect co-ops. They don't exist in statute. That's fine, though, because home education does. And co-ops are basically a cooperative effort of parents who are directing their own education and home educating their kids. They just get together and help each other out.
Where it starts to get muddy is when you're blending
Money.
something well, the money, yes, but also
Money is
something
where
that
it
is
gets.
actually system directed and you're trying to push
Mm-hmm.
it into the home education or personalized education program lanes. Then what
Mm-hmm.
happens is, well, if something happens at a system-based place, a micro school, whatever, um, but they're calling themselves home education, well, now the legislators are looking at restrictions and background checks for everything in that category. So
Mm-hmm.
this is where those definitions become important and those distinctions of what fits in what lane become important.
Very important. Very important. If you're just listening in, I see that the numbers have jumped quite a bit since when we first started talking about the topic, but you've joined the podcast for the Home Education Foundation. We're kind of talking about some of the things that are trending, especially in regards to some of the things that are on our list of issues to address this year. One of those being some of the new trends of how school choice and home education are expanding in Florida, and what some of pros and cons of that are, and the need for definitions for things like home education instructional programs. I know for that in particular, we had a great definition, and we had that they had to be in a non-residential location in there. And there was a very specific reason for that, and it was because when they're being held at a non-residential location, the location themselves, the facilities that are leased or rented themselves, have legal requirements on the location for anyone who's working with children.
Yeah.
And in order to keep those regulations out of home education law, so you don't see any of these regulations coming in about fingerprints and background checks to be volunteers, etc., coming
You
into
don't
home
want those
education
in the
law.
home education law.
Yes, Brenda very pointedly talks about how back in the 90s there was a healthcare bill that sought to do that very thing and make it so that parents had to be fingerprinted and background checked to make sure they weren't abusers so that they could bring their own children home and home educate them. We don't want to see those kinds of restrictions
And let me
invited
let
back
me
into
just
the
linger
statute.
on that for a second. One of the
Hmm.
biggest issues with that was that the implementation of it, and even the departments that would have been involved in the implementation were saying this. They basically, parents would have been stuck in limbo waiting for permission to homeschool their kids and
Would
never would
never
have gotten
happen.
it because
Yeah.
the departments did not have the manpower or the capacity to
And it
do all
wasn't
those
on their
fingerprints
priority
and
list.
background checks, and it wasn't on a high priority list.
Hmm.
And so basically, those parents would have just had to stay enrolled in public school or whatever until they got permission, and that
Yeah.
permission would never have come. And
Yeah.
so that is why it is so important. It's one reason why it's so
Yeah.
important to keep those regulations out of the homeschool statutes.
Yes.
And that burden was put on the facilities for home education instructional programs for that reason.
Hmm. So
The
you can
problem was
imagine
that
if a program,
definition wasn't actually in statute. It was just in
right,
the purchasing guide.
right, they're meant the home education instructional programs are in statute, but the definition for them actually resides in the purchasing guides, and that's kind of that's why the definition was able to be adjusted so abruptly after being put in there. If you can imagine a program that's operating in a home that then you have some catastrophic issue, some abuse happens, and it runs as viral as the story of the that girl who was abused. I think she was killed in Georgia by the people from Venezuela, and it became a national story. It just went viral like wildfire. And that happens for home education.
Yeah. That
What were
is
they doing there
well,
anyway? And
that
why
is
were
the
these people in this?
reality.
Why are these people doing these programs in their homes?
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. We
Like,
should put a stop to that and regulate that. And
I don't
yeah,
want to be a fear mongerer, but
it's
this is an
happened though.
important point to linger on is that the media and its
Oh,
interaction
dude.
with the homeschooling slash parent directed, however you want to phrase that. When I say
Mm-hmm.
homeschooling, I'm talking about ideologically home education, anything
Mm-hmm.
parent directed, home education, PEP, those options. The way that the media interacts with those spheres is very important because
Mm-hmm.
that is the reason why we
Yes.
were facing restrictions for PEP last year because of the way that the media portrayed certain purchases that were not even necessarily actual purchases. They were
Mm-hmm.
parents asking about purchases, and some of the articles were published before PEP funds even dropped for the year. But it didn't matter because the
Right.
perception was there, the concern was there, the media furor stirring everything up was there, and that the legislators have to deal with public perception. They have to.
Yes.
And
They
so
do.
that is
They do.
it is part of the reality of their role is
Mm-hmm.
the way that things are perceived publicly matters to them.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, it does matter to them.
and
And the way things are really, if this is what they believe is actually happening and
right.
happening everywhere, they're going to regulate it.
And so
Um,
we're then fighting the
the
misconception,
definitions are important.
and this is why this matters so much
Mm-hmm.
to keep these regulations out, to keep the lanes for
Clear.
parent-directed freedoms protected from those types of
Yes.
situations.
So we differentiate. We want to differentiate between system-led, teacher-led, and school-led systems, and we want to differentiate that from parent-directed education.
And
That's one of
even
the key
and even
things.
for parent-directed stuff like HEIPs, we wanna be careful
Mm-hmm.
to keep them to keep the burden of the regulations on things like the physical location, the facility, rather than
Mm-hmm.
bringing fingerprinting and things like that into the homes.
Right. Right. Because the facilities actually have those requirements legally placed on them, and by putting the emphasis there on the non-residential location, it was fine,
So
and it
again,
worked.
this is why we say that these issues are nuanced and it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to just kind of toss out a list of like, here's the key
Right.
talking points
Right.
for
Yeah,
this
because if you
year.
just come out and say, "We don't want you called this," you're like, "What's your
Right.
problem?
Right.
How do
Um,
you care?
right. And
Why are you trying to limit parents'
things
choices?"
like
But we're
hybrids
not.
and micro schools,
We
those
just want them
terms,
defined.
like I said, those terms mean different things to different people. So if we were to put out a list saying we're
Right.
pushing for micro schools to not be considered parent directed, people would be like, "What?" Because again, those terms are used in different ways by different people. So
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult to just release a list
Yes.
of what it is that we're discussing. But we are working on some posts that
Yeah.
we can maybe explain some of the nuances and have, because we want our community to be involved and engaged. We want the parents to know what the concerns are that they need to have on their radars and
Hmm.
be discussing with legislators. And so we're just still kind of formulating the best way to release that
Yeah.
information with the least amount of confusion.
I will
Um,
say that we can say some of the other things that are on our list. We
yeah.
definitely want contract language for PEP students to be made so that the districts, some of them are coming on board. I think I heard back from the DOE this past week, and they said you'd be glad to know that Step Up for Students is seeing some of these districts contact them to be set up as
Some of
providers,
the ones
and so
we
that
were
they can try
seeing
to.
repeatedly, parents
Hmm.
having issues with, are being fixed. So
Yes.
that's great.
But it's still not uniform, and I would like, we would like to see just something spelled out uniformly where they can just, you know, do it and get on in. But also, I gotta say, I try to like everybody, and I think I do a good job. But I have come to realize that the goodness that I kind of try to assume everyone approaches things with is not always the case. There are genuinely people who just don't want to do their job. Like, they want to be employed and take money, but they don't want to do their job, or they just don't like homeschoolers. Yeah, sure, it's more popular than it used to be back in the 80s. Far more. People don't look at you like you've grown 5 heads. They look at you and they go, "Oh, homeschooling, that's cool. I've heard of that." But that doesn't mean that they like it. And we're running into a lot of those who don't like it and don't like that parents are exercising their freedoms and their choices.
Or who see it as a threat to the public school system.
Sure.
There's that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely see that. So we would like for the contrary language to be spelled out so that, it's clean and they know what's expected of them, and they can do it. Would like to see, we talked about those things. Instructional materials, we would love to see, we want to make sure that they don't touch that. That's one of the things that they tried to do last year. We really don't want to see them do that. I would much rather them use the purchasing guide
We wanna keep
to.
that category and statute as broad as possible because,
Hmm.
again, every family's needs are different. What qualifies as an instructional material should be able to be proven by some sort of educational benefit and not
Hmm.
by an arbitrary restriction in statute,
And
so
historically, it's the catch-all. So the moment that you limit it, you limit everything that's
yeah.
in the program. So anyway, payment dates for renewal. There's I didn't see any actual payment dates in the statutes for PEP. So
They're in there
uh,
for UA, but not
the,
PEP, and I think that
right.
has a lot of people confused, but
Well, I think that both of the SFOs that we have currently are, I think, from a process and system standpoint, they're trying to just kind of do them together, I think, because it makes their jobs easier. They're doing two things at once and do them, but we'd like to see that clarified. The digital devices, that's the one.
yeah.
It's on the list. I was
That's
looking
the
for
big
it.
one in terms
It's
of
huge.
what parents mention the most often.
Yeah, we see
That
it a
has been
lot.
on our list from the beginning.
And it makes
Um,
perfect sense.
but if you were around last year, you know that we didn't really get to push for the things we wanted to
Nope.
see added because we were so busy fighting back the restrictions. So,
Mm-hmm.
again, depending on what happens this year,
Mm-hmm.
we may be able to push for that one. We may end up
Mm-hmm.
having to fight another battle to keep additional restrictions on.
Yeah, frequency of purchase restrictions, and like.
We were successful in getting the spending caps removed last year.
Yeah, yeah. I think all of
That
those
wasn't a
things
statute
are
thing, that was a SFO purchasing guide thing, but
are valid, but I would like to see digital devices included in as a approved valid expense. I don't know how to say it. My brain is stopping.
yeah. As
We'd
an
like to see
approved
digital devices
category.
included as a approved
Exactly.
category. Yeah, and that way parents are not having to like fudge things like, oh, is this a PE device? Like, personally, I'm not even gonna share that opinion. Let me just say generally, that there are a lot of things that I look at, and I think 100% of that item is digital in nature.
Well, parents have even been confused
Like
about, like,
how does that make sense?
Step Up was able to get things like TVs because their
Yeah.
classroom furnishings is how they categorize them,
Right. Yeah.
but that's been confusing to parents from the start. Like,
Sure.
how is a TV
Sure.
not a digital device?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the definition for digital device is sort of fluid because it's not it's not
And then
clearly spelled out in statute. So most of the time that's being defined as laptops, tablets, things like that.
and the challenge comes down to trust. Like it's difficult for legislators to trust parents whenever there's not digital devices in there, and yet we're sliding it in these back doorways, and that's not us. That's Step Up for Students. But
And logically, it's a solid argument to say that if you're going to allow virtual programs and online
yeah,
classes and things like that as approved expenses for PEP, then
yeah,
you should also allow the devices necessary to access them. So,
yeah. Let's get them in there and get them
yeah.
defined. Let's stop trying to see if we can fit it in as a piece of PE equipment or a classroom furnishing. Let's just get them defined and stick them in there, and let parents empower parents to deliver those that education to their children. Like so many parents, I think, are reluctant to take on directing the education of their own children because they're coming out of a system and then they don't feel like they have all the tools that they need. And if they come home and they don't have a computer and this class or that class or whatever they're looking to take is online and like, oh, this is a great guitar lesson online, okay, great. Oh, here's an interesting, oh, that's online too, okay, cool. If they don't have access to a digital device to run these on, like they're definitely not going to feel confident and empowered to direct the education of their own child. They're going to be looking for some other system to just go, well, I don't feel like I can do it on my own. Let me plug them in somewhere. And so someone can help them. And I think that that's back to square one. Like you just came out of a system. Why are you plugging back into another? Again, I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong with parents directing the education however they see fit. But home education and parent directed education, like it's you're pulling them to do it and then you're not empowered to do it. So it needs to be there. Digital devices need to be there.
Yeah. Um,
All right.
I
What
want to just
else?
throw in a side topic that is only slightly related, but that it's something I've been seeing a lot because we've had
Yes,
so
I
many
did trim my
conversations with,
beard.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
not what I was talking
Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
about. We've had so many conversations lately with new parents at conferences, and I'm seeing them a lot in the Facebook groups and everything as well.
Mm,
Um, I just want to say that your homeschooling, whether that's PEP or home education in statute or however you're doing it, it does not have to follow the public school schedule.
yeah, no.
So this is something that I'm seeing a lot of parents really freaking out
Yes.
about is, "I don't have my funds yet for PEP. How am I supposed to buy curriculum? School has already
How can I get
started."
started? I'm not
School
gonna
starts whenever you make it start. That
say that
just
again.
school starts whenever you make it start.
Yeah, take a deep breath.
So I just want to reassure parents that are new to home education or PEP,
Mm-hmm.
um, that you
Yeah.
do not need a packaged curriculum. If you're
Mm.
waiting to order one, you can go ahead and start with whatever you have. You can do something informal until you get
Mm-hmm.
the rest of whatever you wanted,
Mm-hmm.
or you can wait and just in the meantime, we call it deschooling, but
Mm-hmm.
basically just be with your kids. Take them to a park, take them to do educational things in the real world. You don't have to have this whole plan and system right from the get-go.
Mm-mm.
However, even if you want to do a structured schooling, you do not have to follow the school schedule. There are parents in home
Mm-hmm.
education and PEP who school year round and just take breaks whenever they need to take breaks. There are
We did
parents,
school on Sunday.
yeah, there are parents who school on, like, their own kind of rotation. I've seen, people who do, like, 6-week cycles, 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. I've seen parents who do it by quarters and take a break between each quarter, and then there are parents who follow a typical school schedule because it makes sense for them because they have family or friends who are on vacation at certain times that they wanna be able to go on trips with or whatever. You choose, that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
So please don't be panicked about the fact that school is starting on a particular date and you still don't have your curriculum or you still don't have this or you still don't, it's okay. It's really okay. If you're home educating in statute, make sure you keep samples of the work, keep a reading log so that you're meeting the requirements of statute. If you're under PEP, you don't even have to do that. You just have to make sure you test at the end of the year, but we do recommend that you still keep a portfolio just for your own use in case you ever need it for something.
Yeah.
But take a breath and it's okay.
Take a breath.
Yeah.
Take a breath.
It's
You know
okay.
what? It's funny because, and I really appreciated this conversation, but Mr. D from Mr. D Math invited me to be a special guest on his podcast, and we did the recording for it this past week. And I'm really looking forward to it coming out. You guys will drop it on our Facebook page and link over to it when it drops. He asked me at a certain point during it, like if I had one piece of advice for parents, homeschooling or home educating, and thinking about it, what would it be? And it ultimately just was take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it does not have to be everything that we've been programmed to think school has to be. The goal is to get your children formidable in the face of life's challenges. It's to get them to be relentless in pursuit of their passions, their dreams, and their goals. And it's to get them morally conscious so that they can sleep at night with a clean conscience, right? And I think you do that and they'll learn math all their life. They'll continue to learn things, science all their life. AI hit last year and it changed the face of every business, period, full stop. Like it changed and that's science. And that's constantly having to learn and keep up with this and adapt to that. And life is always like that.
Yeah,
There
I
is
think
no
that's
12th grade graduation that
that's
just
one of
suddenly
the
makes you like, now you're ready and prepped.
I think that's one of the foundational principles really of parent-directed education is teach your kids how to learn and teach them to be lifelong learners, teach them to be critical thinkers. If you can do
Yes.
that, they'll be fine because they
Yes.
will learn whatever they need to learn. If they hit a job in college, after college, if they choose not to go to college, whatever, if they hit something later in life that they're like, oh man, I never learned this well enough, they'll learn.
Right.
If they need to know it, they'll learn. But teaching them how to
Yes.
learn and how to think is the foundational
Key.
set of
So
skills.
important.
Yeah.
So important.
Every
They may
education
struggle with differential equations all their life.
This is
I don't
one
even
of
remember what that is. I
this
just
is one
know
of
they're
the
real.
things well, this is one of the things that someone said to me early on when we first started homeschooling that was comforting to me. They
Mm,
said every education has gaps. And when I looked at it, I was
mm,
like, that's right. I was public schooled, private schooled, and magnet schooled, like the trifecta of system schools. But there are like classic books that my friends had required reading at their schools that I never read. And there are like topics that my friends learned in school that I never really learned that much about. Like every
yeah.
education has gaps. I know a ton about a lot of weird things that someone else doesn't know about because every education has gaps, right?
Yeah, and the further you get in life, I think the more specialized you end
Yeah.
up getting,
And so I
because
think
you just have to let go of some things.
stressing as a homeschool parent about covering every page of every textbook for every subject that they would have gotten in school is just a formula for burnout and like really stressing yourself,
Yeah.
overwhelming yourself.
If any of
So
you
it's
are
okay.
wonder,
Just take a breath.
yeah, and if any of you are wondering, you see Crystal kind of freezing and stopping. I have used it's the old school Godzilla filter. It's this new thing, and it makes it look like you're yeah, yeah. No, I'm kidding. Uh, you were freezing during that, but anyway, no, it's all intended. Don't worry about it. No big deal. Joanne Stead says, I grew up where public school never started until after Labor Day. So that's what I prefer with my kids. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. You're
For
free to do it
us,
that way. Do it.
for us, we're probably shifting. We have traditionally stuck on the college schedule with
Mm-hmm.
a long extended summer break and a long extended winter break because that's what the class program I directed functioned
Mm-hmm.
on. So it just made sense. But now, because we have convention season in the summer and we have legislative
Yeah.
season in the spring, we're
Yeah.
shifting to a year-round schedule. because
Yeah.
we need to be able to take breaks whenever life gets really, really crazy. So
Yeah.
again, take a breath. You can adapt. Every year you can change it up if you need to, or
Mm-hmm.
mid-year. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. Um, whatever works best for your family. So to those new families that might be watching this, I just want to give that encouragement that you don't have to stress. Take a breath. If as long as you're enrolled in an attendance track and you have fulfilled the requirements to not be truant, then if you are home education or PEP, either one, you are setting the pace for your kids, and no one is going to be checking whether you've
Wow.
launched a full school schedule by August
No.
15th. It's
Heather
okay.
Dole says, "We love taking Thanksgiving until mid-January off. That's mind-blowing to me. But do it, do it."
Well,
And you know
we
what?
were doing close. We were doing like early December to mid-January.
Yeah, I guess
But
we did a little bit. But Thanksgiving, wow.
that's such
No,
a
but
great
you know
thing
what?
though. Like you can
Tell your
travel, you
story.
can spend time with your family. I would love to see that in a video.
Absolutely. Tell Heather, make a tell your story project for us. Send us in your 60 seconds of here's why we home educate, what we enjoy about our freedoms, how we do it, and the impact it's had on our kids. Just give us that little thin slice. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm looking forward to it. Anybody else who's out there who does something similar, hop in and
And this is the thing,
tell
the
us all
kids are
about it
learning. Here's the truth, the kids are learning during that too. Like
constantly.
when we take our breaks for
Constantly.
convention season and legislative season, the kids are
They don't
going
turn
with
their
us to
brains off.
conventions. They're going with
No.
us to the Capitol.
We get these
It's
long car
really
rides.
not
Yeah.
a break from school. It's just
No.
a break from my structured lessons for them because they're still learning. And if you're taking Thanksgiving through January off, but you're spending that time as a family and you're doing things together as a family, I'm sure they're still learning.
Jennifer Scott says we quote school year round. Also, my thing keeps jumping. We try to have teachable moments every day.
Yes.
Jennifer, yes, absolutely, 100% yes. And you know what's funny? I will catch my sons reminding me of something or saying something that they overheard me saying to someone while I was on a phone call in the car because we were going to get groceries together or doing this or doing and it just reminds me that they're sponges, man. They are soaking it up. They're soaking it up. And the more experiences that you can just take them on, the more you can just throw them out there and to experience the world and be with them while they do it. And then coach them and talk. They don't know what's on the rocks. You do. But
Teachable moments are key because
huge.
that's why Brenda pushed for there to not be hours and day requirements for home education and statute
Mm-hmm.
because her whole argument to the legislators was how would we even track that? We're schooling all the time. Like we don't have a formal school. We school at the dinner table. We school while we're cooking dinner. We go out at night and look at the stars and we have astronomy lessons. Like we are teaching all day long.
Yeah. Did
Um,
you see what Jennifer said?
She said, "We have seasons in life. Sometimes we have to pivot when a death occurs or new life with the baby. The children learn where our priorities are. More is caught than taught." Absolutely.
Priorities.
And
Teaching our
that
children
is the
priority.
thing.
That's huge.
That is the thing is that
Huge.
home
Where's the school course in priorities? I need a school course in priorities. Where's the priority curriculum?
yeah,
I
that's
need
the
to be
thing is
able to buy it.
character training and
Man, I'm gonna
priority
get in
training.
trouble.
Those are all things that are also essential that are being taught
Yeah.
behind the scenes as you're just having those day-to-day interactions.
Yes.
Jen,
I'm gonna get in so much trouble, man.
Joanne said, "It's so hot in Florida. I've found a lot of families prefer to homeschool over the hot summer, take their vacations in the cooler season. Love how parents have
Mm-hmm.
the freedoms to homeschool on their own schedule." Yes, Joanne, there are some families in the homeschool community here that do that exact thing because they're like, it's just too hot to be outside, so we just school in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes.
I do really love
Yes.
the freedoms we have in Florida, and
Yeah,
that is
man.
why we are working so hard to protect those freedoms.
And they're different. So I gotta before we wrap up, I'll let everyone go here in a second. I want to harken back to what we were talking about earlier about them being nuanced. Home education in Florida is not called homeschooling legally. by law, and that's very intentional. It's called home education. It's also set up as its own separate attendance track. That's also intentional. It's very important. Other states like Alabama and Texas, you homeschool through a private school or a private tutor or through your church, and they're just set up differently. So things that work in other states don't necessarily work here. And a lot of people are advertising their programs to parents who home educate in Florida. Oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, and we'll take care of this for you, or we'll take care of that for you, or we'll do this. And it's like, just have your head on a swivel and truly understand and help us protect that home education in Florida is a separate enrollment attendance track.
Yeah.
It's
And
protected.
we are
and
working
defined.
on a video where we're going to go more in depth into the attendance
Yeah.
tracks and how they work and what the statutes actually say. And I'm thinking that I'm probably going to work on some blog posts or forum posts for newbies. That's basically
Yeah.
like, if you are home educating, make sure
There's so
you
many
are
new.
keeping the logs and the portfolios. If you're
Mhm.
PEP, here's the things like, I think that would be helpful. So I'm going to work on those.
I
But
think that would be cool as a part of the Tell Your Story project. If people go, here's how we make our portfolio,
yeah,
like share that. That's great. I think that's awesome.
but the point is that in Florida, the statutes are somewhat unique and
Yes,
different
they
than
are.
other states. And
Very.
so if there are people, and there are a lot of people who have moved to Florida in the last few
Mm-hmm.
years specifically for school choice freedom, but they
Yes.
may not know
They may
fully, they
not
may not have
understand it.
fully studied the statutes and how everything actually
They just assume it works the same.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the other thing about that. You're absolutely right. A lot of people have moved to Florida recently, and with that, it's the same kind of idea. We look at them and we go, okay, great. You've moved here because Florida is in a good place, and where you moved from wasn't what you wanted, right? So make sure that when you vote, you remember that. Keep it the way that it is, the place that you moved to, not turning it into the place you came from. That's very
Yeah.
important. And I think that that is a great metaphor for home education and public school. There's a lot of people who are leaving a public school system. They're leaving a system and they're going into parent-directed education arena. You left that for a reason. Don't try to turn this into that. Feel free to experience the freedoms. The world is your
And if I
classroom.
can just add to that with another push for the Tell Your Story project,
Yes,
if
go
you
for it.
have been
Then we'll wrap.
homeschooling in the ideological sense, whether that's PEP or
Mm-hmm.
home education, umbrella, whatever you're doing, please, if you've been doing it for a while, we need your videos. We do.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's happening, not only from the legislative side, but what's happening with new families that are coming into the state is they don't have
A reference point.
they don't have a reference point. So their
Mhm.
reference point is however homeschooling operated in their state or the public school system. That is their reference point.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even, you don't know what you don't know, right? So they may
Mhm.
not have even realized or considered the possibilities that are there for them until they see someone else doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So we need those stories
Yeah, we
to
do.
help families see the freedoms that they have so that they're not trapped in this structure
Mhm.
because it's the only thing they know, right?
Yes. All right. Thank you. If you go to flhef.org and you go to the support page, so it's right up there under support us. If you hover over that tab, you'll find the Tell Your Story project because it's very important to us. It's in 2 places in the menu, but it's there because that's one way that you can support us. But the other ways that you can support us is we are still looking for those support tiers from families or businesses. And with our 501c3 setup, it's a great way for businesses who are looking to hit a benchmark for a tax write-off or a bracket to be able to divest some of their funds into a 501c3 and protect something that they love seeing in our state, and it be protected. But then for those families, we have different tiers. If you're good to go and you can do one of the higher tiers, by all means, there's a lot of plans that we have that it's difficult to execute when we're split. I still work another full-time job, so it's definitely one of those things where, funding does make a difference, and it will go a long way to making sure that we keep home education protected. There are other vendor tiers that are here also. So if you're a vendor, you can see those and you can support by using one of those. And if you're one of those people who's just looking for a one-time donation, there are so many ways that we have tried to just kind of make it easy, but help share the stream, help us get the word out, talk to your representatives, let us know, hop in the forum, let us know if there's a way that you need help, you need some talking points on a page, or you really just need something. We can put links to some of the streams that we've done, our videos, and we can collaborate with you and help get you the information that you need to help you with your projects, and the things that are important to you, to communicate those across. And just thank you again for being with us. We're going to go back to our top sponsors one more time. Thank you, Arete, FPEA, and Fisher Precious Metals for being our top sponsors, the Home Education Foundation, and HEF Connect. Thank you dearly for all that you're doing to help protect families in Florida and the freedoms of parent-directed education. Without anything else, Crystal, do you have anything to add before we go?
No.
No. Excellent. Well, you all have a wonderful rest of your Monday, and we will see you all next week.